question 3, and we're looking at congruent polygons. Okay, so we're looking at congruent polygons and what congruent means. So congruent means when two figures have the same size and shape. Okay, so your figure is going to have the same size and the same shape. The symbol for congruent is this one right here. Okay, that is our congruency symbol. In the pictures below, these three figures are congruent. They are all the same size and they are all the same shape. Okay, your orientation doesn't matter, so it can be turned around, flipped over, anything like that. As long as they are the same size and shape, they are congruent. The ones on the right here, these ones are not congruent. Okay, this one is larger than this one, and this one has a larger angle than this one does. Okay, so they're not the same size or the same shape, hence why they are not congruent. Okay, so two polygons are congruent if and only if corresponding sides are congruent and corresponding angles are congruent. And you can write out congruent if you want to. So with two figures, you have to have corresponding sides congruent to each other and corresponding angles congruent to each other for the figure itself to be congruent to the other one. Okay, so we're going to label our corresponding parts in these different figures here. So we're going to state the corresponding parts of the two congruent triangles. So these two here. So we're going to do our sides, then our angles, then we're going to write our congruent statement. Now with my triangles here and my sides, okay, side AB has one dash mark in it. Okay, I need to look for the side in this triangle that has one dash mark in it. That would be HJ. Those two sides then would have to be congruent. So I would write that as side AB is congruent to HJ. Okay, so I'm just labeling those congruent segments within the triangle. Okay, so I did the one dash mark. I'm going to do the double dash mark now. So that would be side BC. So I have to find that double dash mark in my other triangle. Okay, that's KJ. So that means BC would have to be congruent to KJ. Okay, last one. My last remaining side in this first triangle here is AC. That has 3 dash marks. Okay, the side with 3 dash marks in my second triangle is KH. So those two sides must be congruent. So we have AC congruent to KH. Questions on my sides? Okay, next we're going to do the angles. So we want to do that same process with our angles. So to label congruent angles, we use this little dash mark in the angle. So angle B has 1 dash. So I have to find that single dash in my angle in the other triangle, and that would be J. Okay, so here I would state that angle B, yes, that's an angle symbol. Angle B is congruent to angle J. Okay, next I need to find the double dash mark. So that would be angle A in my first triangle, and that would be angle H in my second triangle. Okay, 2 dashes, 2 dashes. So angle A is congruent to angle H. Last angle here is angle C. It has 3 dashes. and so does angle K. So those two angles must be congruent. Questions on the angles? All right, next I want to write a congruence statement. Okay, so for my first one, these are triangles. Okay, so I am going to label these as triangles. Okay, my first triangle. I have triangle A, B, C. Is congruent to. Now this one, your order is specific. Since I started with angle A is congruent to angle H, right? So that means in my second triangle, I have to start with angle H. So then I would say triangle H. After A, I went to B. B has one dash. Okay, B is congruent to J. So from H, I should go to J. And then my last one would be K. So when you're writing your congruent statement, your order is important. Yeah.
Okay, why does it go A, B, C, but then it doesn't go H, I, J?
Because there's no I.
Yeah, I know, but it's not following the rule.
We're not doing anything with the alphabet.
It's math, not the alphabet.
It's fine.
Deal with it.
Hey, stop. You don't need to yell.
Wow.
Okay, so with these congruent statements, your order is important. Okay, order is important. So if instead I started my first triangle, say I went B to C to A. Okay, if I went B to C to A, I'd have to locate which angle B is congruent to. That would be J. Then I went to C, which had 3 dashes. So in my second triangle, I'd have to go to K. So BCA would be congruent to JKH. Okay, so you have to do it in that specific order. Okay, A has to be congruent to H, B to J, and C to K. Does that make sense? Yes? All right, so number 2 then, we're going to do the same thing. So you want to label your congruent sides and your congruent angles. This time, though, you're not given dashes, you're given actual measures. Okay, so I want you guys to do number 2. Label the sides that are congruent, the angles, and then write out a congruence statement.
Q to P word. Q to P word.
Right.
Wouldn't it actually be QP because Q is 50 and P is the 52?
That doesn't matter.
Okay. Hey, Miss Keel, how come we're not taking the test Friday?
You're on school Friday.
You couldn't tell from my sarcastic voice.
All right, so number 2, I have my sides and my angles. Okay, sides and angles. For your sides, your letters can be flip-flopped. So instead of LK, you could have KL is congruent to MQ. That's fine. Okay, just make sure you have those combinations together. Then I have my angles there. For your congruence statement, some of you might have something different than someone else. Okay, depending upon what you started with. So if I start with triangle LJK, okay, that would be congruent to triangle QPM. Okay, if I start with, which one? KJL, that would be congruent to triangle MPQ. JKL would be triangle PMQ. Okay, so it does depend what you started with. So L should line up with Q, J should line up with P, and K should line up with M. Okay, questions on those? All right, last one then. Number 3 is not a triangle, it's a trapezoid. It's the same thing though. So you label your congruent sides the same, you label your angles the same. So for the sides, I would look for my single dash. So I would have BC is congruent to XY. Okay, that was the single dashed side. Okay, this double dashed side here is AB. I have to locate that in my other figure. That would be side XW. My next side in the first figure here is AD. Okay, looking for that triple dash, that would be ZW. Okay, then the last one here is CD with 4 dashes. So look for 4 dashes in your second picture. That would be YZ. Okay, so those are the sides. Same thing for the angles. Angle A is 1 dash. Angle W is 1 dash. So we have angle A congruent to angle W. Angle B has 2. Angle X has 2. So we have angle B is congruent to angle X. Next angle over is C. So we have angle C with 3 dashes. Angle Y has 3 dashes. So those are congruent. The last one is angle D. Okay, that one will be congruent to angle Z. For your congruence statement, this is a quadrilateral, okay, more specifically a trapezoid, but it's a quadrilateral, so we just write a four-figured object. Okay, so here I would have A, B, C, D. Again, however I'm starting is congruent to our other four-sided object. Okay, since I started with A, and A is congruent to W, I need to start with W in my second one. I went from A to B, B has two dashes, so I need to go to X next. Okay, then I went to C, so go to Y, and then lastly to Z. Okay, questions on your congruence statements? All right, then go to the back real quick here.
Cat and RHS. Did you make this worksheet?
A while back.
Is that why it says triangle cat and triangle RHS?
All right, so on the back, the phrase if and only if in any definition means that both the conditional and its converse are true. Conditional means the original, and converse means whatever it is backward. Okay, or opposite. Okay, so conditional is what you had originally. Converse is you read the statement the opposite way. Okay, so this means the definition can be read forward and backward. Okay, so if we have two polygons that are congruent, then their corresponding parts are congruent. Okay, so for triangles, we say corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, we state this as CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Yeah. All right, so we're going to use this in number 4. So number 4, we're given triangle CAT is congruent to triangle RHS. So we want to find the different congruency statements for each of these. Now to help you, I suggest you draw out a picture. Okay, so I would draw a triangle CAT. Okay, and I would draw a triangle RHS. Okay, because then, since I have these drawn, I know angle A and angle H have to be congruent. Okay, side AC and side HR have to be congruent. Okay, likewise with all of your other sides and all of your other angles. Okay, so they should all line up. Yep.
If we just have the lines, like, to show that they're congruent, do we need to put the
No.
circle thing?
How many lines you got in your team?
What?
How many lines you
Oh, 3 and 3.
It's an angle.
All right, so now for number 1, I want to find the angle congruent to angle C. Well, with my picture here, I can clearly see that that would have to be R. Okay, so I would write angle R. Okay, number 2, we're looking at segment RH. That one's right here. I need to find the other line with one dash. That would be AC. Okay, then I have CT. So that has 3 dashes in my picture. So looking at my other triangle with 3 dashes, that would be RS. Okay, then what angle is angle S congruent to? T. With this one, I have triangle ACT. So I went from A to C to T. So I need to go in that order for the other triangle. So that'd be H to R to S. Shh, quiet please. Last one is side HS. That has 2 dashes. So our side over here would be AT. And that one does not have a segment bar above it. Okay, so if I started with congruency with the segment bar, I need the segment bar. Here, this is just the measure of HS, and it's an equal to sign. So I only include AT, you don't include that segment bar above. Okay, so it has to match that. Questions on number 4? Does it make sense when you draw it out? Yes? All right, last problem we're going to do is number 5 off to the right. So, shh, quiet please. In the diagram, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DFE. And we want to find the values of X and Y. Shh, guys, I need you to stop talking. So, here, from my congruency statement, I know which sides and which angles have to be congruent to each other. Okay, so angle A has to be congruent to angle D. B has to be congruent to F, and C has to be congruent to E. So I can label that in my picture. So angle A congruent to angle D. A congruent to D. Okay, angle B is congruent to angle F. Okay, so angle B congruent to angle F, and angle C congruent to angle E. Okay, with that label, I can also tell which sides are congruent to each other then. Well, this side BC is between this angle, and that's the same side as FE. So I know these are congruent. Same thing with AB and DF. And then AC and DE. Okay, so I can label those triangles with their congruency markers. From there, it's easier to solve for these variables. So if I look for X in my picture, that's right here. But there's also a Y in this one. Okay, so I'm going to need to find Y first. Okay, well there's a Y over here. Okay, what angle is angle F equal to? B, which is 99. So I can set this 8y minus 5 equal to 99 because I know those angles are equal. Okay, so I have 8y minus 5 is equal to 99. Add 5 to both sides. So 8y is equal to 104. Divide by 8. Y is 13. Y is 13. So now that I've found Y, what I can do is plug that 13 in for this Y value here in order to solve for X. So I would plug in 13 for Y. So I have 2 times 13 plus X. 2 times 13 is 26. So my new equation for side FE is 26 plus X. Now, FE would be congruent to what side in my other triangle? BC, which is 38.4. So I can set 26 plus X equal to 38.4. Okay, and from here I just solve for X, so subtract 26 from both sides. To get X is 12.4. Okay, so that's how you would have to use your congruency statement to figure out those values. Questions?